Beautiful world, where are you? Return, sweet blossom age of nature. Are only in the fairyland of songs still lives your fabled trace. Friedrich Schiller. Do you know that feeling when you just want to get away? Away from everything, running through the forest, feeling the silence. And then you stand in front of what's supposed to be an ancient forest and realize these trees are barely 30 years old. Marketing for tourists. Something inside you mourns. But why? It turns out this longing is completely natural. It's the unconscious callback to our origins. An inner knowledge that these grey boxes and endless roads, is not what we were made for. And in fact, modern psychology confirms that alienation from nature is one of the biggest factors in depression. In Japan, doctors can officially prescribe forest walks during work hours. That's medically recognized therapy. Today we will look at where our Christmas traditions really come from, what the church forgot to mention, and why rediscovering these roots is more important than you think. Main source for this episode, Dr. Thomas Hoften, philosopher and author of The Demonized Forest God, The Christianization of the Germanics.
Geht los. Ja. Am 25. Dezember 1642 nach dem julianischen Kalender wurde Sir Isaac Newton geboren. Jesus dagegen wurde tatsächlich im Sommer geboren. Sein Geburtstag wurde verlegt, damit er mit einem traditionellen heidnischen Fest zusammenfällt, an dem die Wintersonnenwende gefeiert wurde, mit Feuern und geschlachteten Ziegen. Was vermutlich mehr Spaß macht als 12 Stunden in der Kirche mit meiner Mutter und anschließendem Früchtekuchen essen.
Look, I know we're not that religious, but Mom and Dad made it a tradition. It's the one night a year we get together and have a nice, somber, Christian-y evening.
Well, that's pretty weird, because historically, Christmas was actually a really raucous holiday, and most of our Christmas traditions have really unchristian origins. Here, I'll show you.
In the Norse country, this winter celebration was known as Yule. Around December 21st, the winter solstice, fathers and sons would drag home the biggest log they could find and set it on fire. The Yule log warmed, but it also looked ahead. Each spark was said to represent a pig or calf to be born in the spring. Also dragged inside were evergreens, the one plant that could make it through a Norse winter. Evergreens proved that life persisted in this dark time.
There's a natural attraction to that which lives through the winter when one is struggling to survive through the winter. The evergreen is that part of nature that seems impervious to the coming of winter and the diminishing of the sun. And so it's an absolutely natural symbol, one which I think we react to almost without thinking about.
I hate to burst your bubble, Chuck, but this has nothing to do with Christmas. December 25th is still Jesus' birthday.
Actually, no one really knows for certain when Jesus was born.
For Christians, the fact of his birth was settled, but the date remained a mystery. The Bible doesn't mention exactly when Christ was born, but certain facts suggest it probably was not in December.
So if you're going to sort through the runes of the scriptures, Jesus was probably born in the spring. If the shepherds are out in the fields watching their flock by night, we're not talking about one of the cold spells at the heart of winter.
December 25th was the winter solstice in that part of the world, and it was also understood to be the birthday of the sun god, Mithra. And Mithra was said to be born from a rock. Shepherds came to worship him as he was an infant god born out in that pastoral place in the fields. And many of those stories, of course, have come into Christian tradition.
But we do know that when Christianity took hold of Europe in the 5th century, some common folk refused to part with these pagan parties. So Christian leaders gradually transformed these popular traditions into a celebration of
The church knew it could not outlaw the pagan traditions of Christmas, so it set out to adopt them. The evergreens traditionally brought inside were soon decorated with apples, symbolizing the Garden of Eden. These apples would eventually become Christmas ornaments. And holly, a traditional midwinter decoration, was recast to represent Christ's crown of thorns.
People already had their own agenda to for this season. And that agenda was not one that was really radically changed when the names got changed from non-Christian to Christian names. The church pretty much had a policy of live and let live. If people would call themselves Christians and do lip service to the birth of the Savior, then let them do anything that they wanted to do with it.
Inserting Christ into these winter festivals was basically a civic compromise. Make the party about Jesus, and you can keep getting jiggy with it.
Imagine, about 2000 years ago, Central Europe was one continuous primeval forest. Ancient writers reported in law, a squirrel basically could travel from Scandinavia to the Alps without ever touching the ground. The people who lived here, our ancestors, were forest people. They didn't build monumental temples like the Romans, no stone cathedrals. Instead, they consecrated natural clearings, they created sacred groves, they worshipped certain trees as cosmic axes between worlds. The oak, to this day a symbol of strength and steadfastness, not by coincidence. This episode as a little gift to you, to show you that however you choose to celebrate this year, you are doing some spirit's honor.
Well, Chuck, sounds like that's when Christmas became the nice family-friendly holiday we know today.
Nope. It stayed a debauched, violent booze fest for a long time. For over 1,000 years, Christmas was more like a terrifying Mardi Gras.
The Saturnalia celebrations were certainly times of revelry, of turning the social order upside down, of having the master pretend to be the slave and the slave pretend to be the master, sort of a time out of time in which one could celebrate a kind of disorder in the universe.
The party raged inside in defiance of winter's deadly howl.
There is a spooky feel about the northern Yuletide festivals. You may be all right there in the hall with the blazing fires, but outside there are demons, there are spirits.
In Germany, the pagan god Odin lent his name to this midwinter holiday. Early Germans were terrified of Odin, whose nocturnal flights decided who would prosper or perish in the coming year. Later, we'd see another Christmas sky rider, Santa Claus. But for now, staying inside became the smartest choice at this frightening time of the year.
Der Vater wird auch nicht verschont. War vielleicht zu oft am Stammtisch. Oberstdorf im Allgäu am Nikolaustag. Schaut in der Dämmerung noch ganz friedlich aus, aber bald geht's wild auf. Denn das ist der Abend, auf den die Allgäuer Kinder das ganze Jahr mit Zittern und Bangen warten. Wenn die Kläuse nämlich, so nennt man dort die Mehrzahl von Nikolaus, also wenn die Kläuse mit ihren Kuhglocken, ihren Hörnern, Ketten und Rasseln durch den Ort ziehen, dann machen die Kinder im Wohnzimmer ihre Hausaufgaben schon zum 3. Mal und sind ganz brav. Und es ist ganz gut, dass sie nicht sehen, wie wild es vor der Haustür zugeht. Denn niemand bleibt verschont, der den Kläusen in die Hände fällt. Heuer waren es 130 dieser verwegenen Gestalten, die den Allgäuer Markt Oberstdorf unsicher machten. Die Heimathistoriker haben herausgefunden, dass dieser Brauch im Allgäu bereits auf die vorchristliche Zeit zurückgeht. Und wenn man diese Kläuse so sieht, dann kann man sich vorstellen, was die Kinder dieses Landstriches an Angst und Schrecken ausgestanden haben, bevor sie vielleicht selbst Kläuse geworden sind.
But then, in the year 772, Charlemagne crossed the Rhine. His goal, to subjugate and civilize the last great pagan tribe, the Saxons. He destroyed the Irminsul, the Saxons' most sacred symbol, and when they refused to denounce their gods as demons and tricksters and convert, he had over 4,000 men publicly beheaded, the Massacre of Verden. Afterward, he issued the infamous 34 behavioral rules for former pagans in 782, all punishable by death. You can perhaps imagine why modern pagans have so few verified facts about their own traditions. The systematic eradication was thorough.
So, with nothing holding back the mob, they burst into the Serapeum en masse. Now, why did Theodosius do this? Well, besides the library, within the walls of the Serapeum was a temple to the god Serapis. And around this time was when Theodosius really started putting into effect his war against paganism. Throughout the entire empire, he would either allow or authorize the destruction of many pagan sites. just like you're seeing here. Centuries of history and culture disappearing within his reign. The temple of Serapis was completely destroyed, but the true loss came when the Christians descended upon the library and tore it apart.
But nevertheless, many of them simply want to express their reverence for nature. And honestly, I deeply respect it. To all the deconstructivists in the audience whose fingers might already be hovering over the comments, I was an atheist myself for years. I understand the temptation to mock everything spiritual. But seriously, look inside yourself. Where does this hatred come from? From being lost. We live in a time where everyone claims to have a heart for nature, but simultaneously condemn or ridicule anyone who wants to express their genuine reverence for it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The moment our civilization redefined nature from something sacred to something useful was the moment we entered the path of destruction.
I am the man behind the man behind the man.
As long as we don't change our perception, and yet that's also a spiritual process, we won't find a real solution. By the way, for example, Steve Jobs swore by psychedelic experiences as one of the most important things in his life. But more on that in the upcoming Stoned Ape Theory episode. But there's also reason for hope. The German poet Heinrich Heine spent his life searching for the hidden traces of this ancient time. And he found something fascinating. The old gods may only be in exile. They cleverly disguise themselves, slip into new roles, elude the fanatics. Because like weeds, the fiend always returns. Ever thought about why Wednesday is called Wednesday in English? Odin's Day. Already Herder and Goethe speculated about a new pantheistic modernity, a philosophy that combines rational science with natural mysticism, a holistic worldview that synthesizes spirituality and reason. But when money is your only god, when you don't even consider that there might be more than this material plane, even though our senses are so ridiculously limited, we see less than 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum, then the children of Loki thrive. And you will recognize the false prophets by their deeds, not their words. The irony is cutting. Okay, now it gets interesting. A modern Santa Claus, red coat, white beard, comes during the winter solstice. This is Odin, Dr. Höfgen explains. In myths and legends, this god appeared in countless aspects. Sky Father, an ancient concept, older than the Romans. Death god and warrior, god of sorcerers and shamans. The wild hunter, the horned god. And of course, a forest god. The West Germanic Wode, later Wotan, is directly related to the English wood and woods. The connection is direct. During the winter solstice, Odin rode with his wild hunt through the skies, accompanied by spirits in the dead. Sounds scary? It was. But it was also a celebration. In fact, Christmas or Yule had a long tradition of, let's say, exuberant celebrating. In 18th century New York, people took to the streets and crowned the beggar the king of misrule. Pranks, excess, sometimes even crime.
Christmas was illegal?
The American Puritans simply
in some
banned
communities,
it.
if you exhibited Christmas spirit, you were even forced to pay a fine. Thanks to the legacy of these rules, Christmas ended up pretty unpopular in America. But all that changed in the 19th century. As immigrants flooded into America, they brought with them a love of Christmas and their own traditions. These seeped into the popular culture, and a new American Christmas began to take hold. And now, we treat Christmas like it's always been a sacred Christian celebration. But the historical truth is, these winter festivities have pagan roots with drunken traditions that a lot of Christians straight up hated for like 1,000 years. Now look, celebrating Christmas as the birth of Jesus is a wonderful tradition, but it's just as historically accurate to get drunk in the woods or bang on a rich person's door and threaten them with violence. So instead of worrying that Christmas isn't Christian anymore, why don't we just let people celebrate the way they want?
Only in the 19th century was Christmas transformed into a peaceful family celebration. Okay, let's talk about the S word. Sacrifice. Pop culture loves to dramatize Germanic and Celtic sacrifice rituals. Blood, drama, human sacrifice. But here are two things you should know. One, almost everything we know was written down by Christian monks. People who had very specific interest in portraying the old religions as demonic. When your opponent writes the history, well, you understand the problem. 2. Sacrifice had and has many meanings. Ancient shamans and druids didn't only offer animals or rarely humans. Sometimes the sacred sites were on the most inaccessible rock formations. The pilgrimage itself was the sacrifice, the effort to prove oneself worthy. And here's my personal interpretation of this. Every time you cultivate or renaturalize land, pick up trash while walking, help a living being, improve yourself, that's a sacrifice to the greater good, to nature, Gaia, maybe you call it Emir, to the connection of all life. Similar to how jihad is often translated only as striving for self-improvement, a sacrifice for what you believe in, whether for yourself, your loved ones or the world, is always a form of devotion that serves everyone. This episode is a small gift to you during the Christmas season. No matter how you celebrate this year, whether Christian, pagan, atheist, or just with family over good food, you're part of an ancient tradition. Think about it. There were so many generations of ancestors who fought through all of history to make you possible. Famines, wars, plagues, ice ages, and they made it. You are the proof. One could argue that we owe it to them to never give up at least. And remember, on a cosmic, karmic level, no contribution to order is ever in vain. Every small good deed, every improvement, every moment of reverence, it counts. As Werner Heisenberg said, the universe is not only stranger than we think, it's stranger than we can think. More on this again in the upcoming Stoned Ape Theory episode. Happy holidays, whoever you sacrifice to, and for those with ambitious aspirations and self-improvement for next year, I can recommend you the coming episode on the military decision-making process on Stratagem Strategy Academy on the 2nd of January. Perfect for your New Year's resolutions. Tools to plan and actually implement your goals. Until then, stay vigilant, stay healthy, and sacrifice something for what matters to you. Nothing is true, everything is permitted.
Der Wolf wird kommen. Und die Welt wird brennen. Nichts besteht für immer.
The war begins.
Rise above the mountains, light a fire in the sky, for the blood is running still from the roots of Yggdrasil.
Fa la 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 la.